Hi, I'm Michael Kennedy, and I'd like to show you a really cool feature of the new Windows operating systems, Windows 7 and Windows Server 2008 R2, called Boot to VHD. So VHDs are these virtual hard drives that come from Virtual PC and Hypervisor, those sorts of things. And maybe you guys have used these before to test alternate configurations, to run more than one operating system for, say, software development or testing, anything like that. And that works pretty well, except for, of course, those are virtual OSs running inside your real OS. They usually only get access to one core, or they're sharing the CPU with your host operating system. So with Boot to VHD, you can virtualize just the hard drive and boot to one of these VHDs, but the rest of all the operation, the execution of your programs, running of the OS, is completely dedicated to that system. So you'll have access to all your RAM, all your USB devices, all the processors on your machine. Very cool stuff. And I just started playing with it today, and I wish I'd known about it earlier, so I'm making this video to show you guys, so you can get excited and try it out for yourself. Now, this would normally be something you would just do as a screencast, but it requires rebooting into different operating systems and all sorts of stuff like that. So I guess we're going to use this camera instead, and I'll record it, and you guys can just watch what happens there. Alright, so I'm going to move over to the computer here, rearrange the camera, and we'll get started. Let me give you a quick tour of everything I have set up here so you know what we're going to end up with. I've got my Lenovo T61 laptop here running Windows 7 32-bit, and I have a second monitor hooked up. You can see I have my webcam, I've got a nice microphone up here, all these different devices plugged in. You know, most of this stuff doesn't work under virtual machines, but we'll see it works awesome under Boot to VHD. We also have this virtual hard drive, and on this virtual hard drive I have an ISO image of the operating systems I want to create bootable images of. So we'll have Windows 2008 Server R2, we're going to have 64-bit Windows 7, excuse me, and we'll just attach to that using a virtual clone drive rather than using CDs. Alright, the first thing we have to do is we actually have to create the VHD. So we're going to do that with the device manager. So right click on your computer and say manage. Go down to disk management. We need to actually mount this VHD as a proper drive so I can use some of the system installation tools on it. And that already is a cool new feature of Windows 7 and the new server. I can say right click and create VHD. Okay, so when I say create VHD, it asks me for a location. And I've got a place on my hard drive, C VHDs, where I'm putting all my extra bootable images. So right now I have a Windows 7 image that I'm using for installing beta software like Visual Studio 2010 and those sorts of things, as well as a Windows 2008 R2 server for similar types of testing. And let's just create a Win7 sample VHD, and you have to say how big it is. We're going to need at least 7 gigabytes, that's the install, so I'm going to say 10 gigabytes, but you might want to leave room for however much space you want your hard drive to, you might think you're going to need. And then down here, you can either say fixed size, which will perform slightly better, but will take all 10 gigs no matter how much space is on it, or you can say dynamically expanding, which will take only as much space as it needs, but when you boot to it, it will actually really quickly expand it out. So you're going to need that much space available to actually boot to it, but when you're not running that OS, it'll drop back to its usage, its use size. So we say OK, and you heard that little USB click. That's like a new drive is attached. And down here we have this unknown disk not initialized. We can right click and say initialize disk. Yeah, and just take the defaults. Right. Then it should come online. So it says online, but there's no partition. So we right click, new simple volume, and just take all the defaults, take all the space, right? Choose the drive letter. I'm going to pick O, because it seems like it won't conflict with anything. Choose NTFS, give this a sample drive label, perform quick format, and finish. So you see, just like any other new drive down here, it says 10 gigs formatting. Alright. Finish formatting, came up, and I didn't pause the video, it was that quick. And you can see here's a new drive. If I open this up, I can see what files there. Of course there are none. On my computer though, we now have a simple drive. Pretty cool, huh? So once drive O is set up, I can then go over to this other location where I have my VHDs, or my ISO images. And I've got a folder MSDN, which has all the MSDN images from my subscription. So I have in here somewhere Windows 7 Home Premium X64 DVD. And I told you I have virtual clone drive, so when I click this, it will mount that as a virtual CD. And it'll pop up here in a second and say it's going to install it, but I don't want to install it. I just want to realize this is drive F. If I open it up, we can see there's a couple of folders. One of them is going to be called Sources. Inside Sources, there's a folder or a file called Install. Where is it? Install WIM. Okay. So let me just copy that / install WIM. Then we go to the command prompt. And in the command prompt, we're going to go to the Windows Installation Automation Toolkit for Windows 7, which I downloaded and installed. It's free. Just Google it. But we'll say cd Windows Automation Installation Toolkit. Then I think there's an x64, or there's a tools. And then an x86 rather, because that's my operating system. And now I have this thing called ImageX. And I can use ImageX to ask some questions about this installation package I got. So I can say ImageX / info, and I give it that WIM file, fsources install.wim. And what we'll see is there's actually a bunch of installations on here. There's Windows 7 Ultimate, right there, Windows 7 Ultimate. And if I go up, notice that that's under index 4. We've got Windows 7 Pro and some of the weaker ones, right? So here's what I'm going to do. Is I want to say ImageX, apply this installation there. I want the 4th image in there, and I want this to go to O:\\. So ImageX / apply F:\sources install WIM. Make sure you get the right one, because a lot of these have many installations. Like Windows Server has 8 or 9 or something. So when I hit go ahead and do it. What it's going to do is it's going to look at that installation and basically install Windows 7 onto that virtual hard drive. Because we mounted it as a proper drive, ImageX doesn't know any better. We're going to install this kind of as like if we were Dell or Gateway or somebody. They install Windows, but it kind of still comes up with this first boot experience and asks for your username and password and what time zone you're in. So you can see this is incredibly fast. Installing Windows 7 will take 3 minutes and 23 seconds, or 26 seconds. Not very long, right? And it kind of will jump around. It'll probably go up to 4 or 5 minutes. But very quickly, we're going to get this thing installed. And then the next thing we have to do, and you see the time climbing a little bit, the very next thing we're going to do after this is we have to do something kind of scary. We have to edit the boot loader to tell it there's this new boot configuration. Okay, so we'll do that in just a minute. Alright, we're back. You can see it took a little longer than advertised, but 9 minutes later our Windows 7 is installed. The last thing we have to do is just edit the boot loader so that our bootloader knows we have this new bootable OS. So the tool to do that is this thing called BCD Edit. And here you can see I already have some of these installed. And the first thing that we do is we say take whatever your current configuration is and copy that to a new slot in the bootloader. So BCD Edit / copy, and the way you say your current configuration is curly current. And you give it a description in quotes. The new description will be sample Win 7x64. So here, I'll zoom in on that for you, like that. Okay, so when I say go, it should say was successful, and what would I get back is a GUID. It said we copied it successfully to this thing, this slot here. So let me copy that when I need it. Now, once I've copied it, I need to say, well, I don't really boot to my hard drive, but rather boot to this device. So I'll say BCD edit / /set, and I give it a GUID, the same one that was just created, and I say device space VHD equals, and then I have to say something kind of weird. Instead of C:\\, I say square bracket C:, close square bracket, then /VHDs and now I gotta go see what I called that one because I forgot. Okay, so drive C VHDs. This is Win7 sample VHD dot VHD. It says that was set successfully, so that's my boot device, and then I can say my OS, my boot OS is the same location, so I say OS device. And then the last thing I need to say is for this system, for this boot, I need to tell it when you boot, redetect the drivers and the hardware for this system, kind of like it came from the manufacturer the first time you turn it on. So I will say detect HAL for hardware abstraction layer is on. Okay, should be set. Let's reboot and see what we get. Shut down or restart. I'm going to zoom out for you. And move over here because when I have these two monitors, you'll see that all the boot stuff comes up on this second monitor here. Right now we're still shutting down. Okay, rebooting. Move into the screen, we'll see stuff come out. Try to change the lights to get rid of glare. A little better. Alright, here it comes. Booting up ThinkPad. Give it a second if we got it right. Alright, how about this? Let me cancel the auto boot. And we have, let's see here, boot to sample Windows 7 x64. Choose that. You can see starting Windows. How about that? So what we're going to see when this turns on is the only thing that is virtual is the hard drive. Everything else is completely normal, as if it was a proper hard drive, right? We just have a slightly slower. I heard numbers like 10% slower or something like that. And here we are logging into our freshly installed Windows 7 64-bit OS. And we can see, if we come here, by pulling up Task Manager, switch over to Performance, you can see we have 2 cores, as well as 4 gigs of RAM. If I bring up the Mobility Center, something with nice see-through, you should be able to see the animation moving through there. We also have some of our devices attached. Here we can see our Logitech 9000 webcam. It's going. We'll have flip, right, live. All the features you'd expect of a regular PC rather than a virtual PC. And on top of that, we even get, in some places, better performance than you might have seen before. Watch how fast Internet Explorer goes. I can tell you on my real computer, it takes a lot longer to start Internet Explorer than that. Here, I'll do it one more time so you guys don't hear anything. Listen for the click. Amazing. So very, very cool, this boot to VHD thing. I'm actually starting to wonder why I don't use one of these VHDs as my actual main OS and just have a core, something like a Windows 2008 R2 server core or something that I boot from, and so I can just sort of select between all these places. That means migration is copying a VHD, restore on failed computers, copy a VHD. It sounds great. So hopefully I gave you guys some things to think about here. You can have a real computer with virtualization pretty easy as long as you're running Windows 7 or Windows 2008 R2. You can also do it, I believe Scott Hanselman, or one of the blog links I'll probably post along with this video, talks about how to do this with Windows Vista as well, but I think it takes a little more hacking and a little more living on the edge. Yeah, it looks like Windows is doing indexing, all sorts of stuff here. Right? So that's it. Go out, virtualize, enjoy.